Welcome to The Explainer. We are diving right into a literal archaeological detective's journey today, bridging ancient theological texts with hard, tangible evidence pulled straight out of the dirt. We're looking at the reign of King Solomon. Now, he's famous for his wealth and wisdom for sure, but his actual historical footprint, well, that requires some serious investigative work to uncover. We're going to see exactly how modern archaeology takes texts that are thousands of years old and uses them as a literal map to unearth an ancient empire. Here is our roadmap for today. First, unearthing Solomon's reign. Then, the topography of ancient Jerusalem, searching for his famous temple, fortifying the kingdom, and finally, Solomon's global economy.
All right, part 1, unearthing Solomon's reign. Let's look at how we even know what we know.
When we look at the source material, specifically the history from Joshua through the books of Kings, we're looking at something scholars call the Deuteronomistic history. But here is the catch. It is not a modern historical textbook. It was finalized during the Babylonian exile, basically to answer one big burning question from the Israelites: why are we in exile? So it's a selectively curated, highly theological roadmap. Major geopolitical events of the time? They might just get completely skipped if they didn't fit that theological narrative. And understanding that is absolutely crucial because it changes how we search for Solomon in the physical world. Dr. Jeffrey Hudon hit the nail on the head when he called the lens of this history cumulative retribution. Let that phrase sink in. Cumulative retribution. The texts judge these kings based on whether they followed their religious laws, and the consequences literally pile up across generations until the straw breaks the camel's back. So, as we dig in the dirt, we have to read between the lines, knowing our primary source is filtering everything through divine reward and punishment. But hey, we also have hard, tangible, epigraphic evidence you can actually see. Take the Gezer calendar, discovered by R.A.S. McAllister. It dates to roughly Solomon's era. It's this small, soft limestone tablet. Think of it as an ancient schoolboy's agricultural cheat sheet. And the coolest part? It's a palimpsest. That's basically an ancient etch-a-sketch. You can actually see older, scraped-off letters hiding underneath the main text. It's an incredibly rare glimpse into everyday literacy, proving that administrative and educational systems were absolutely up and running back then. Moving on to part 2, topography of ancient Jerusalem. Why build a capital exactly there? Well, it's all about the geography. Ancient Jerusalem sits at an elevation of about 2,500 feet, nestled right in this geographical bowl, surrounded by even taller mountains. Picture 3 distinct areas: the Eastern Hill, which is the oldest inhabited spot, Mount Moriah, the sacred precinct just to the north, and the Western Hill, the highest point. Now wrap all of that in deep, steep trenches, the Kidron, Central, and Hinnom valleys. Those steep valleys provided incredible natural defenses, which is exactly why the city was founded right there. Now look at the difference between father and son. Under David, the city was pretty much stuck to that small Eastern Hill core. But Solomon? He went big. He expanded the walls northward, pulling in an area called the Ophel and encompassing the heights of Mount Moriah. He totally transformed a rugged little hilltop town into this sprawling, massive royal and religious capital. Which brings us to part 3, searching for the temple, the crown jewel of that newly enclosed Mount Moriah. But here is the ultimate archaeological puzzle. How in the world do you study a building that literally doesn't exist anymore? The Book of 1 Kings gives us incredibly precise measurements and descriptions. But the physical building? Utterly destroyed. None of it knowingly exists today. So what's an archaeologist to do? They look sideways. They look for parallels. And this is where it gets absolutely amazing. In the 1980s, teams excavated a massive pagan temple in northern Syria called Ain Dara, dating to a very similar era. The match to Solomon's temple is mind-blowing. It has the exact same floor plan: pillared entrance, antechamber, main hall, holy of holies. It even has sphinxes that perfectly match the biblical cherubim. And get this, there are giant footprints carved right into the stone floor at Ain Dara, meant to show their god physically walking into the sanctuary. It gives us a breathtaking visual for how the ancients imagined Yahweh dwelling in Solomon's sanctuary. But can we find the actual spot in Jerusalem? Actually, yes. Beneath the Dome of the Rock lies exposed bedrock. Architectural researcher Lean Rittmeyer studied these stones and identified foundation cuts that align flawlessly with the ancient walls of the Holy of Holies. Even wilder, right in the exact center, he found a rectangular depression perfectly matching the biblical dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, wow. It's an incredible piece of spatial detective work that puts the very heart of Solomon's kingdom on our modern map. Okay, part 4, fortifying the kingdom. Let's zoom out and see how he protected all of this.
I love this part because the ancient text literally becomes a treasure map. 1 Kings chapter 9 explicitly states that Solomon used forced labor to build up 3 specific frontier cities: Hazor, Megiddo, and Gezer. For an archaeologist, that is an open invitation. You go to those 3 distinct sites, dig down to the 10th century BC layer, and see if the architecture matches.
And guess what? It worked. Over decades, different teams excavated these distant cities. Up north at Hazor, a massive 6-chambered defensive gate. Over in the Jezreel Valley at Megiddo, another 6-chambered gate. Out west at Gezer, a 3rd identical gate. The measurements are practically copy-pasted across all 3 sites. It proves definitively that there was a centralized, empire-wide architectural blueprint running the show during Solomon's reign.
And it wasn't just the layout, the actual engineering leveled up. Enter ashlar masonry. Instead of just stacking up rough, unshaped field stones, Solomon's builders used finely carved, square or rectangular stones fitted tightly together in an alternating pattern. It was a total game changer for construction technology, and here's why it matters. This engineering made these royal fortresses incredibly tough, completely cementing Solomon's military grip on the region.
Finally, part 5, Solomon's global economy. Building an empire is not cheap. So, where did the cash come from?
The archaeological record reveals a massive, interconnected economic machine. Down in the arid south at Wadi Finnan, we found enormous copper mining operations. But you can't cast copper without wax for the molds, right? Well, hundreds of miles away in the north at Tel Re'ov, archaeologists uncovered this gigantic industrial-scale beekeeping operation producing exactly that beeswax. Tie it all together with Royal Maritime fleets sailing out of Etzion Geber on the Red Sea, and you see 10th century Israel sitting right in the middle of these massive, coordinated, global industries.
420, that is the staggering amount of gold, measured in talents, that the text says Solomon's joint naval fleets, run with King Hiram of Tyre, brought back from the exotic port of Ophir. To put that into perspective, that is an explosive, kingdom-altering influx of wealth. It's the kind of money that turns a small hill country kingdom into a major economic power broker on the ancient world stage.
But, to wrap up, we have to admit that archaeology rarely gives us all the answers. Mostly, it just gives us much better questions. Like those dozens of mysterious Iron Age forts scattered across the harsh Negev highlands. Were they military outposts to protect trade, or just agricultural settlements pushing into the desert? We still don't know for sure. And those impossibly wealthy ports of Ophir and Tarshish, scholars are still arguing if they were in Africa, India, or maybe even Spain. The texts give us the clues, the dirt gives us the pieces, but it leaves us wondering what other massive secrets of King Solomon's empire are just waiting beneath our feet right now. Thanks for joining me for this explainer.